So let's start with notation. Proper notation is essential in math because it helps us communicate most effectively. It'll also help make things easier for you. So whatever notation I show, even if you have your own better way, follow along with that notation because it's appropriate mathematical notation, and so it's effectively communicating the math, and it will make things easier. They're not just something I've made up on my own accord, but something that's been used traditionally in math. So always follow the notation, even if you have a better way, and it will make it easier to learn. So make sure you always show your work and keep it stacked, and I'll give you an example of that in a moment. And again, the reason why with proper mathematical notation, even though you could just put the answer down and that's all good, it's the same as using proper notation in English. Having simple things like commas in English can make a huge difference in what things say. Like, let's eat grandma. That there says, let's eat grandma, and actually take a chomp out of grandma and eat her for dinner. Versus, let's eat, comma, grandma, where we're now eating with grandma rather than eating grandma. So here's that example I mentioned, negative 4x plus x equals 14. We're going to look at showing your work and keeping it stacked. So we're going to show the steps along the way to make sure that we know what's going on, and that'll help kind of solidify it in our head. Don't worry if you don't understand why I'm doing this specifically. We're later on in the course, we're going to actually look at solving these questions, and that should be a little more apparent when we get there. So here I have negative 4x plus 6 equals 14. I'm just going to walk through this. I'm going to always keep my equal signs stacked up like this, one over the other. Don't start putting them on the end here. Some people want to start writing things on the end like it's an English sentence. That's not correct in math. And in many cases you'll end up writing something that's a false statement. Don't put them at the start of the line here. What we want to do is always keep them in line with all the equal signs. So here we go with this one. So I'm moving this this positive 6 over, I'm making it a negative 6, the opposite operation. And I'm just showing all my work along the way. And so 14 minus 6 is 8, and then negative 4. Actually, I'm going to get rid of that negative 4 now. Negative 4 is going to be divided on the other side because it's being multiplied here. And I'll get a negative 2. So that there would be a proper setup with proper notation. I showed all my steps and I kept things nicely aligned. One of the things to note here is the my x. I try and keep it a little bit different. Using a sign like this, nice and clean and square like you traditionally do with an x. Is that an x or is that a times? And we don't know, and it can get confusing. You could end up writing something like this piece here as negative 4, because what it is negative 4 times x. You could be writing negative 4 times x. Now, is that 2 x's? Is that negative 4 times x times x? Is that negative 4 times x? Like, what's the situation there? So rather than writing these the same, actually what I like to do is get rid of this completely and change it to a mathematical dot. So mathematical dot replaces this with a dot. Not a decimal, which would be down here, but a dot that's in between. Also remember that when there is nothing in between a number and a letter, that means multiplication. Same thing when you have a bracket. That there means there's multiplication happening right here. One other notation that I tend to prefer is the division sign, and it again helps out when we're doing these calculations for some of these questions. I use this as my division sign. Remember that the division sign is just a representation of a fraction, something over something. So if we have 4 divided by 2, or 4 divided by 2, write it this way. It's a fraction-like question, but fractions are just division. They're not really anything different than that. And so if we write it like that, it'll keep things a little bit neater, and it'll help out along the way when you're solving these types of questions.